All right. Took the wraps off the bow this morning. Everything looks really good. Kind of interesting. You can still see kind of the whitish where it hasn't dried in the handle section because I like to put a little extra sinew there to keep the reflex in it. So, if you double up on, if you're doing a single layer and you're doubling up right through here, got my seal of approval. Got to protect that reflex. But here I am with this really cool little Osage gullwing, 42 inches. Proof it's Osage. And it never gets old. As a sinew bow wrapper, you take it off the next day and it's started to dry down. There's just something magical about these things. You're touching history. You're touching the same thing that somebody, hundreds and hundreds of years ago relied upon for their daily living. It never gets tired. And so I'm going to do the authentic style of tips on this thing, where it's just kind of bare wood, kind of a lozenge sticking out the end. And then the sinew backing in the wrap keeps the string from sliding up. But again, just did some temporary wraps on the end just to keep it, because I didn't take the sinew and do an over and back because I haven't finished final tillering this thing. So again, just temporary wraps. And those temporary wraps will allow me to string it for tillering on my tillering stick. It'll keep the string from going down, which is good enough. And then I can get the belly exactly where I want it and round the edges of the belly. And then I'll remove that sinew from a section and then put the final wrap on it. That's about it. It's coming along. And if you haven't sinew backed yet, I challenge you to do it, because once you see that sinew dry down and create like this living thing, and it does. I mean, this thing looks beyond organic. It looks like a living creature. You're going to be sold on sinew backing. And it's simple. I mean, I talk about how, you might not be aware of this. How did I discover my method of just taking that whole bundle of sinew and just sticking it in a Ziploc bag and then pouring some thinned hide glue on it and just yanking the sinew out and sticking it on 1, 2, 3, whatever, fibers at a time? Not highly organized activity. As long as you put it on even, you make sure you're overlapping each fiber. How did I come up with that? Well, I had a sinew-backed bow that I broke. And I ripped that sinew off of it, and it looked like the shape. It was actually a paddle bow that I just destroyed on purpose to see what would happen. So I had this sinew sheet that looked like the shape of a paddle bow that had a bunch of wood stuck to it. And so I just kind of rolled it up and stuck it in a pot of water and left it there until I could just separate it back into the individual fibers and picked out the splinters of wood and all that stuff. And then I took each fiber and I laid it upon it, the other fibers, so it was a nice, neat bundle. And I was sitting there thinking, that's exactly what happened. It's the history of John. Thinking, these sinew fibers are different than when I originally laid it on the bow. I mean, starting out. Because these sinew fibers already have glue in them. And so I took that baggie, it was just water in these previously used sinew fibers, no hide glue added to them, because again, experiment. And I took a bow and I sized it properly. And I just pulled these sinew fibers without adding any more glue, because the glue was inside. Sinew fibers plus glue. And I just laid them on that bow, wrapped it after it dried a little bit because I didn't want to glue my gauze to it. And it worked. I wound up having that bow. It was actually a white cedar paddle bow. It was pretty cool. It, after a lot of use, had little compression lines on it, but it was still a pretty good bow. It was kind of like a West Coast paddle bow. Took pictures of it, wrote a little article. it very well might be, butterfly effect, that there was an article in Primitive Archer on that bow that I had written. Possibly. I mean, if memory serves right, yes. I'm not too sure. I'm pretty sure that, yeah, I did an article for Primitive Archer on that bow. I don't know where that bow went. I think it's up in Canada somewhere right now. I sold it. Just did, hey, YouTube, you want a bow? And a viewer, yeah, I want that bow. And I said, it's white cedar. Take it down and shoot it once in a while, but it's not an everyday shooter because it's white cedar. But it's a pretty cool bow. Sold it at kind of a bargain because it's not like Osage, it was white cedar. I think it's somewhere in northern Canada. I think this guy lives way up in Canada. But yep, that's the story of how I became sold on what I believe is a really primitive method of just thin hide glue and just sticking the stuff on the back of a bow. And with that, I shall say, well, I'm not going to say the end yet. Today's an exciting day. I've got my bows and arrows and quivers. Big cedar contraption I made in the bed of my pickup truck, and my cab is full of bows. This is the art walk today. And so I'm going to set up outside of a law office on 3rd Street in Rogers City. And meet people and talk about bows. Have a good one. Thank you for watching.